Tim Morrow and HarperAudio present The Lighthouse on Moonglow Bay, a novel by Wilde, performed by Teri Schnaubelt. Chapter 1. Harper. Sourdough starter. Composed of fermented flour and water, a sourdough starter is a leavening agent that uses naturally occurring yeasts and bacteria to make baked goods rise. For over 150 years, the lighthouse on Moonglow Bay had been haunted, and everyone in the sleepy seaside town of Moonglow Cove, Texas, knew it, and avoided the place. At 116 feet, it was the second tallest lighthouse on the Texas Gulf Coast, and the third oldest. Adorning the roof was a wooden widow's walk outside a small, enclosed glass cupola. The lighthouse sat at the farthest tip of a 10-mile curve comprising the charming half-circle inlet. As many lighthouses of that era were built, it was made of bricks brought from New Orleans by schooner in the late 1850s and covered with white plaster. But what made the structure singularly unique was the odd forward jut that gave the eerie illusion the lighthouse was about to fling itself into the ocean. Despite its beguiling exterior, dark secrets lurked inside. Only one family had ever owned the property, a once large and prosperous family that was now almost extinct. Beside the lighthouse stood the keeper's cottage. The house was two-story, 1,800 square feet with a square box floor plan. A high-pitched gabled roof, gingerbread trim, twin chimneys, and window dormers lent the utilitarian design a whimsical air. Entry through the front door led to a living room on the right and a parlor on the left, which in recent years served as the master bedroom. The back door led through a mudroom straight into the big country kitchen. At 4:30 on a sunny afternoon in May, a black SUV pulled to a stop at the end of the road 300 feet below the craggy bluff where the lighthouse stood. Harper Campbell stepped from the Uber, cell phone in hand, and gazed out across the sea oats shimmering in the wind. Shading her eyes with the flat of her palm, she blinked up at the bizarre obelisk overlooking the water. As she studied the imposing structure, two questions popped into her mind. Why wasn't there a drivable road that went all the way to the lighthouse and caretaker's cottage instead of this cul-de-sac that ended at the ocean? And seriously, why had she worn stilettos? Why? She had no answer for the first question, but as for the second, she'd wanted to look professional and believed the trip would be a quick in and out. Arrive, hear the reading of the will, grab a car back to the airport, and return to the spiraling mess she'd left behind in Manhattan. No need for an overnight stay. Unless you want to mend things with Flannery. At the thought of her younger half-sister, Harper's chest tightened, and she closed her eyes against the onslaught of complicated memories. Breathe. Behind her, she heard the crunch of gravel as the Uber drove away, leaving her stranded alone in the middle of nowhere. Goosebumps lifted the hairs on her arms, and she shivered, unnerved by the strangest feeling that she'd just come home after an eternal journey, even though she'd never set foot in Texas. Frankly, the sensation was creepy. She wouldn't mythologize this place, even though as an advertising and marketing expert that was exactly her job, to manipulate and polish reality into something more palatable. But while she often used nostalgia to her advantage in her work, it wasn't a place where she personally cared to dwell. She wasn't Flannery, after all. Wincing, Harper rubbed the pad of her thumb between her eyebrows where a headache had started gnawing as her plane took off from LaGuardia that morning. She should have had the Uber driver stop for aspirin.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?